Today the Rinpoche will be teaching on Sukhavati, or in Tibetan Dewa-chen, and he asks that we listen to the teachings with pure motivation. So the Buddha gave the teachings, so that he gave 84,000 different kinds of Dharma teachings. And for those who wish to attain benefit for themselves, attain happiness for themselves, attain liberation from samsara for themselves, that they were the teachings of the Hinayana. And then there's some individuals that had a much greater motivation and wish to benefit and bring happiness to all beings. And so to those the Buddha taught the Mahayana teachings. And then to those who were capable of being able to practice it, that the Buddha taught the Vajrayana. And then also there would be people who wished for like health and freedom from illness in this world. And so for those people it was taught the Medicine Buddha. And then there would be individuals who whether they're able to practice the Buddha's teachings or whether they're not able to practice the Buddha's teachings well, that who wish to, in their next life, be free of rebirth in the lower realms and instead to gain a birth in a pure realm. So for those beings that the Buddha gave the teachings on rebirth in Sukhavati, the pure realm of Amitabha. So the Buddha taught many different kinds of methods in order to fulfill the wishes and aspirations of various beings. And so from among these there's the practice of Dewa-chen, or Sukhavati, on the practice of Amitabha. The Buddha taught that there we have future lives, we have past lives, many future lives, many past lives, that beings go through a succession of numerous lifetimes. And but like people have many different kinds of outlooks, many different kinds of ways of thinking. So some people will think, well, there is a past life, there is a future life. And so in believing that there is a future life, people will think, well, I want to attain in that future life happiness. Like on any of the happiness that I've achieved in this life, I want to have in a future life. And I don't want to experience any suffering, like any suffering that I've experienced in this life. And so then the individual has that intention to accomplish that, to become free from suffering, to attain happiness in a future life, and works towards that goal, prepares for that. So that is good, and so some people kind of think and believe in that way. But then there are other people who are not sure, so I think, well, maybe there is a future life, and maybe there isn't a future life. And so people cannot be blamed for thinking in that way, because Buddhism is new, like to the West. It's only one generation old. So therefore people have a kind of uncertainty or doubt whether there really is a future life or not. So one cannot criticize people for being able to think in that way. But though one can't criticize or blame people for thinking in that way, nevertheless, if someone has a complete conviction of that there is a future life, then they will think in terms of how to avoid any suffering in that next life and how to attain happiness in that next life. And then if one doesn't have that like 100% conviction in future life, one isn't, one is not decided either way. It's like one isn't, completely certain that there is no future life, but still one isn't sure that there is, one isn't sure that there's no future life, one isn't sure that there is a future life, but still, if one feels in that way, one can still, plan for how to gain happiness in a future life and how to avoid any suffering in a future life. So we can still do that, and it will still be very beneficial, because if you do that and then it turns out there is no future life, then it doesn't matter, it doesn't make any difference. But then if it turns out there is one, then it will be very beneficial to have done this. So so it's still good to, even if you're not sure, to plan for a future life. So it's important for tomorrow that we plan and prepare for tomorrow, and we do that today. So that's important to do. So also it's very important to prepare for and plan for the next life in this life. So it's so to do that is something which is beneficial for the next life, but it's also something which is beneficial for the next life, but it's also beneficial for this life. So some people are able to have complete diligence and devotion to practice of Dharma and thinking in terms of the next lifetime, and able to discard any interest in this lifetime. So there are some people who are able to do that and abandon all concerns for this life and think only in terms of preparing for the next life. But if one is not able to do that, then the planning for preparing for a rebirth in Gyaltsen, in Sukhavati, is something that's also very beneficial. It's beneficial in terms of a future lifetime, but it's also beneficial for this life, because when we think about our life and the next life, one thinks, well, and after some time, maybe after a year or gradually, eventually, I'm going to die, and then the thought of death is frightening. And so, every day one is aware of coming of death at some point, and one feels some fear about one's own death. And then if one does all the preparation, planning for rebirth in Gyaltsen, then one will think, in time, some point I'm going to die, but I've, doing all the preparation for rebirth in Gyaltsen and reborn in Gyaltsen, and everything will be fine. And so I won't feel fear, one will be able to feel more relaxed and comfortable at the thought of death, because you think, well, yes, death is going to come, but I've done all this preparation that will enable me to be reborn in Gyaltsen, so everything is fine. Otherwise, if one isn't doing that, then the thought of death comes up, and one thinks, well, I'm going to die, and what's going to happen to me? What's going to become of me? Where am I going to end up? And so there's this anxiety and fear. But then that is eliminated by the thought of, if one is preparing for rebirth in Sukhavati, then when one thinks of death, one has that the confidence that things are going to be all right. So when one examines this subject of rebirth in Sukhavati and uses one's wisdom to analyze it, some people might come to a conclusion that this is a very kind of narrow motivation, that it's a Hinayana motivation that's not prompted by love and compassion for all beings, this wish to be reborn in Gyaltsen. But it's not actually like that, because now we are living in called an impure world, and here we are sometimes able to benefit others, and sometimes we are not able to benefit others. But within Gyaltsen, that one is able to, think of benefiting others, and one is actually able to accomplish benefit for others. So in the realm of Dewachen, there are all the favorable circumstances for the practice of the Dharma and for being able to benefit beings. So in that pure realm, there are no hindrances or obstacles. They're all favorable conditions, so that one is able to all the favorable conditions for practicing the Dharma, and so one is able to wish to benefit beings, and one is actually able to accomplish that benefit of beings. A rebirth in Dewachen, in Sukhavati, is not like an immediate attainment of Buddhahood. It means that one is born in that realm, but it's a realm where the conditions are favorable and there are no hindrances, and one is able to practice and follow along the path of the Dharma without there being any obstacles, and therefore one is easily able to benefit other beings. Then also one may feel doubtful about this teaching of rebirth in Sukhavati in terms of karma, thinking that, well, there's this teachings of karma, actions as causes and then their results. So if one can be reborn in Sukhavati, then what happens to karma? What about karma? And in fact, karma is about actions and then the results of these actions. But to be reborn in Sukhavati, there are these 4 causes for rebirth in Sukhavati that one needs to practice and to accomplish. And in terms of karma, there are certain karmic results that must ripen. Then also there's karmic results that karma with results that one can purify, and one can purify that through like confession and repentance and so on. And there are the 4 powers of purification of the bad actions that one has accumulated with one's body, bad actions one has accumulated with one's speech, bad actions one has accumulated with one's mind. And these can be purified through the 4 powers, such as the power of rejection, which will be explained in a later session. So this karma can be purified so that one doesn't have to experience the ripening of their result. And so, therefore, through that approach and through the practice of the accomplishment of the 4 causes for rebirth in Sukhavati, one finds that there is in fact no contradiction between the teaching of of karma that is given in the sutras and the teaching on rebirth into Dewachen. So how does one prepare for rebirth? What does one have to prepare in order to be reborn in Sukhavati? So there are these 4 causes, and the teachings in the sutras on Amitabha, all their meaning is included, is summarized in like the prayer for rebirth in Sukhavati, and so that's a prayer that one can recite and regularly. And within that, there's a description of these 4 causes. And so these 4 causes are something that one needs to cultivate on a regular basis, and this in order to create the rebirth in Sukhavati. And so from amongst these 4, the first of these first cause that one has to gather or accumulate is to keep Sukhavati in mind. So that means that one thinks of it, or one remembers it over and over again. And so this is in order to create this tendency or latency for rebirth in Sukhavati. So one doesn't think of it just once or twice or 3 times, but over and over again one thinks of this realm, this pure realm, and of the form of this realm. As if one thinks of it over and over again, that will develop this cause for the rebirth there. It will grow stronger and stronger, just as if one thinks of good actions over and over again, then these good actions will increase. Or if one thinks of bad actions over and over again, then one's practice of bad actions will increase. So therefore, the first of the four causes is to think of and the realm of Dewa Chen over and over again. So one keeps Sukhavati in mind all the time and thinks of this realm, and so one thinks of it in terms of externally, in terms of the world, the environment of Sukhavati, and thinks of that world in which one is going to be reborn. And then one also thinks of how inside that world there is Amitabha, and how he is like continuously present there within Sukhavati. And one thinks not only of Amitabha but also of his retinue of great bodhisattvas and his sangha of Shravakas that are all present. And so one thinks of this over and again. And so we live in an impure world, and in the world system, a world system which is called worlds of endurance, because there are so many different things that occur there. Some pure and impure, happiness and suffering, all these different things that occur in such a world. And but there are many other different kinds of worlds that exist, pure and impure. And amongst the pure realms, it's that a realm in which it is easy to gain rebirth is the realm of Amitabha. And it is easy to gain rebirth there through the power of the wishing prayers that Amitabha made. So therefore, if we cultivate the four causes for rebirth in Sukhavati, we will be reborn there. And so one of these so the first of these causes is to keep Dewa Chen, Sukhavati in mind, and Amitabha in its center. And so we think of Amitabha, and Amitabha is in appearance generally like the Buddha, wearing the three Dharma robes and sitting in the Vajra posture, and in his head is the Ushnisha, and in his soles of his feet and palms of his hand there's the design of the wheel and so on. So but then Amitabha, one thinks of Amitabha and thinks of how his body is colored red, and one thinks of what he's holding in his hands, and his hands are in the posture of meditation, the mudra of meditation. So different Buddhas have kind of different kinds of physical like postures or activity. Like for example, at Shakyamuni Buddha, that he sits with left hand in the mudra of meditation and the right hand in the mudra or gesture of touching the earth. And this is because he summoned the earth as a witness to his attainment of Buddhahood, saying, I have achieved Buddhahood, and then touched the earth as a witness. But the Amitabha, who is the Buddha of discriminating wisdom, in the Red Buddha and of the West, and so for that reason his both hands are in the mudra of resting in meditation. Then on those hands is the bhikshu's bowl. So one thinks of Amitabha in this way, sitting on a lotus as a seat. His body is very majestic and brilliant, and that in this way he is present in the realm of Dewa Chen. And then to the right of Amitabha, on Amitabha's own right, is Avalokiteshvara, Chenrezig, the great bodhisattva, who is white, and in his left hand is holding a lotus flower. So standing on Amitabha's right is Avalokiteshvara, and to Amitabha's left is the bodhisattva Mahasthana Prapta. But by Mahasthana Prapta we can say that's, we can identify that as being Vajrapani, and he is blue in color, and in his left hand is holding a lotus on which there rests a Vajra. So Vajra rests on the lotus blossom of the lotus that he's holding in his left hand. And both bodhisattvas have their right hand in the Abhaya mudra, which means the gesture of fearlessness, of freedom from fear, the Abhaya mudra. And then also imagines that around these three principal figures there are countless like bodhisattvas and this Sangha of Arhats, that they, so there are countless number of them are around these three central figures, and so we imagine, this is what we imagine, think of. So if one can actually do a meditation on this, then that is good, but also without actually doing meditation on this, one can just think of Amitabha and his pure realm, and one can be thinking of this at all over and over. If when one is, for example, if one is happy, at times when one is happy, one thinks of Amitabha and his realm. One thinks of this realm of happiness. And so on. One thinks of it even while one is happy. Then certain times one is suffering. Then when one is suffering, one also should think of Amitabha and his realm, and think how one needs to be reborn in that realm. And then at certain times one is afraid. So when one is afraid, then one should also think of Amitabha and his realm, and of rebirth there. And so if one should do this in all circumstances. So if one can think when one is happy, when one is unhappy, one is afraid, or if one is sick, in all circumstances, if one keeps thinking of Amitabha and Sukhavati, then this will create this strong tendency for Sukhavati, so that at the time of death that one will just like naturally be thinking of Amitabha and Sukhavati will come to mind when one is dying and at the point of death. And then also when in the bardo, through having habituated oneself to thinking of Amitabha and his realm, then in the bardo one will also think of Amitabha and Sukhavati, and thinking that I am going to be reborn there, and have that certainty of rebirth. Then there will be no attachment to the pleasures of this world, and so that through that one will gain rebirth in Sukhavati. And so therefore it's important to always be able to have Amitabha and his realm in one's mind in all different kinds of situations. And so even if one doesn't think of Deochen for, say, a long period of time, just think of it briefly, repeatedly, and also one can have like to help in keeping Deochen in mind, and have a tanka which portrays the realm of Deochen, of Sukhavati, or have a tanka or statue of Amitabha, so that every time one sees that, then that brings to mind Sukhavati, brings to mind that one needs to gain rebirth there. And Also, one can make like an offering, even if one can't do an elaborate offering, just a small offering to an image of Amitabha, such as lighting an incense stick. And by doing that, then that also reminds one of Sukhavati and of one's wish to be reborn there. And by doing that regularly, that establishes this tendency for rebirth in that realm within one's mind. So one can make like a little offering to an image of Amitabha. If one can do an elaborate offering, then that is good, but even if one doesn't do an elaborate one, a small offering such as a flower and made before an image of Amitabha statue or a tanka or whatever. And by doing this regularly, this will aid in bringing Sukhavati to mind, and together one can make a wishing prayer, together with the offering for rebirth there. So all of this will help in creating this establishing this latency or this tendency for rebirth in the realm of Amitabha. So if one has in one's home an image, a statue of Amitabha or a tanka of Amitabha, a painting of Amitabha, then each time one sees that will bring Amitabha and his realm to one's mind. So this will keep arising, keep coming back into one's mind each time one sees it. And also, not just for one's own sake, but even like for animals, such as if one has a dog or a cat, then though they are an animal and therefore not actually able to practice the Dharma through their, continually seeing an image of Amitabha, that image of Amitabha will again be registering in their mind, and they might dream about it, and so whether they develop faith in that image or that they don't develop faith in that image, that will create this latency in their mind for this Amitabha and rebirth in Dewachen. And there's concerning this, there's in a life story, as I said, in the life story of Vasubandhu, who was a master of the Abhidharma, that during Vasubandhu's lifetime that the Abhidharma had declined, and so he studied the Abhidharma and taught the Abhidharma, and he wrote the Abhidharma Kosha, the treasury of the Abhidharma. So he was the author of that text. And amongst all great scholars and masters of the time, he was considered the greatest scholar of the Abhidharma teachings. And Vasubandhu had, four pupils who were even more learned than himself. There's one who was like a master of the Abhidharma, one who was master of the Prajna Paramita, the perfection of wisdom, one who was the master of the Pramana, the logic and epistemology, one who was the master of the Vinaya, the rules of conduct. So amongst these there's the one who was even more skilled, even a greater master in the Abhidharma teachings itself. So where did he come from? Well, there was when Vasubandhu was younger, he was studying the Abhidharma in Nalanda. So he would be in his cell, in his monk cell, studying, reading the Abhidharma. Then in a corner in the wall there was a pigeon, and so the pigeon would hear Vasubandhu reciting his Abhidharma texts. And so in the morning he'd fly out, in the evening he'd come back in, but when he'd come back in, and then the Vasubandhu would be there reading his text. So every day he'd be listening to the Abhidharma. And then eventually the pigeon didn't really have any kind of sufficient faith in Vasubandhu or anything, but he was just hearing the Abhidharma every single day. And then one day, then eventually the pigeon died, and he was reborn as a human being. And then that human being became the pupil of Vasubandhu, who was even greater master than him in the Abhidharma. And this is because although while he was a pigeon he had no real particular faith or understanding of the Abhidharma, it had established this tendency or latency of the Abhidharma in him. So when he met Vasubandhu, he was just overjoyed to meet him, and when he got to the Abhidharma teachings, he liked the Abhidharma teachings, he was glad to meet them, and he was able to learn them very easily and very quickly. As a result of these latencies in his previous life as a pigeon, and he's the pupil name who's called Stiramati, the great master of the Abhidharma, and so that is how he became who he was. And so therefore beneficial for animals. So even if sometimes, even if there is faith or there isn't faith, to see the images of Sukhavati or of Amitabha again and again, that this will bring them to one's mind, and so to keep Amitabha and his realm to have them in one's mind, or to bring them to mind. And again, this is the first of the 4 causes for rebirth in Sukhavati. And so that concludes Rinpoche's teachings for this morning.